Coming soon for center-based and registered family. This meeting will be recorded, so if any of your colleagues were not able to attend today, there is going to be a recording of the meeting as well as the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angela to go ahead and go over some norms and agenda, and we'll get started. Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So really quick, I think we're all pretty used to virtual meetings right now, but just a reminder that we're asking that everybody stay muted until, it says breakout rooms from a previous meeting, but we're just stay muted until the question and answer time at the end. And then if we do have, open question and answer time, we're asking that you limit it to 2 to 3 minutes to allow time for other folks to contribute. And if you're not a Preschool Promise provider, if you're joining us from the CCR&R, or if this meeting is specifically for school districts and certified centers. So if you happen to join and you're a certified family program or a registered family program, you're welcome to stay on and listen, but we'll just ask that you allow space for our school districts and centers to ask their questions today. So we have some limited time. We're going to go through our welcome. We are going to cover meeting and norms and agenda like we're doing now. I'm going to introduce our team. We'll go over some communication highlights and ways that we're trying to support you through communication. We're going to review questions that everyone submitted prior to the meeting. So thank you for doing that. And then we're going to review the questions and answers that we covered in our recent FAQ document sent out via our bulletin last Friday. I think that document covers a lot of questions that you might have had or that we've been seeing in the Preschool Promise inbox. And then we also have a member of our team collecting questions in the chat box that we will try and get to at the end. Oops, let's go back. Yep, so we're using the chat box for questions. We hope to give you time to share out, but just so we have those collected, we'll ask that you put those in the chat and we'll address as many questions as we can before closing the meeting. So I'm going to introduce our team. We have Rania, who is a grant manager, but she's unfortunately out today. And we have Josefina. Josefina, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I did. Hi, everyone. My name is Josefina Harry. I work for grants, Preschool Promise, and another department, but I'm the person who answered the phones. Anytime you have a question, just go ahead and give us a call, and I'm going to try my best to assist you. Thank you.
Thanks, Josefina. And we have Miriam.
Hi, this is Miriam Amador, and I'm for Preschool Promise Program Support, and I'm the one who answered the phones, whoever's all the provider who call me, and I answer the emails, Preschool Promise emails as well.
Thanks, Miriam. And Anthony, I'm not sure, are you on with us yet?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Anthony Martorano, Preschool Promise Grant Manager Extraordinaire. So awesome to see a lot of faces on here. Sorry that I don't have my camera on today. I don't have access this evening, so.
No problem. And Meredith?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Meredith Russell. I'm part of the programs team here, working with Preschool Promise as well as Relief Nurseries. And it's great to see everybody today and put some names with some faces. Welcome.
Thanks, Meredith. And our program manager, Dana?
Okay, yes, I mentioned good afternoon, Dana Young with our program unit and Preschool Promise Program Manager. Thank you.
And we have a brand new teammate that we're super excited to introduce you today, Antonio.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Antonio Saavedra, and I'll be working along with Rania and Anthony as a grant manager. I'm excited to be here and serve families.
Thanks, Antonio. And my name is Angela. If you are receiving our weekly bulletins, those are for me. I do communication and stakeholder engagement work for the program unit here at the ELD and have recently been doing a lot with Preschool Promise. So on the note of communication, there are a few ways to get a hold of us, and I want to make sure that you're aware of all of them before we move on. So we have our Preschool Promise helpline, which Josefina mentioned. That number is 503-856-2895. Josefina can offer support in English and Spanish. We have our Preschool Promise email, psp@state.or.us. You do have the option of requesting a virtual consultation, and you can request that via email or phone. We send out a weekly bulletin through our GovDelivery service. So Thursdays or Fridays, you'll get an email that is going out to all providers. You'll note that one has a lot of like links to reports and reminders and things about your grant contract and just any tips as we go through this program year, so you can reference that. We also have our newly implemented Preschool Promise communication site, which is a Preschool Promise SharePoint, which we'll talk about more in just a second. We also have our Preschool Promise bilingual YouTube channel. So hopefully you've had the chance to check out all of those. You've been able to communicate with us, but those are the different ways that you can get in touch with our Preschool Promise team. So before we move on, we've gotten this question a few times and I'm sure we'll continue to get it. How do I access the Preschool Promise SharePoint communication site? So if you are on our GovDelivery weekly bulletin subscriber list, if you're receiving our bulletins, we hope that you have already received an invitation from us. It would have come from a member of our IT team, likely somebody named Ben Barshaw. And you can check your spam folder if you might have missed it. But if you think you still need it, you can certainly email psp@state.or.us. We are collecting those emails, and at the end of each week, we hand off a list of new users to our IT department, and they send an invitation to access the site on their end. So if you aren't able to access the site yet, that is how you would get in. And we're going to move to your questions, which you submitted. And thank you so much for taking the time to do that. That is really helpful in helping us know what to address during the meeting today. So the first was just, we heard from some of you that you're brand new to Preschool Promise. Maybe you're a newly hired teacher at a school, you're an aide at a center, and welcome. We're so happy to have you. So here's our very quick elevator pitch for Preschool Promise. Preschool Promise is a high-quality, publicly funded early learning program. It is offered in a mixed delivery model, which means that it can happen in a registered family or certified family home. It can also happen in a center. It can happen at a school district. So one of our goals is to offer preschool in a variety of settings to meet parent need. Preschool Promise is fully bilingual. Everything that we put out is in English and Spanish. The only reason this meeting is completely in English today is because everyone who joined their grantee profile stated that they preferred English. So we didn't have anyone who registered for this meeting who said they preferred Spanish. Otherwise, everything we put out is bilingual. Preschool Promise has eligibility requirements for children. So if a child meets certain eligibility requirements, certain income levels, those are the children that we're serving, children that are frequently furthest from opportunity. The program is at least 4 days a week, 5 hours a day, and 900 hours a year. Now, of course, COVID-19 has changed that significantly. A lot of you are operating with an approved waiver to do a hybrid model or a home-based learning model. We know that this year has looked a lot different, and that's okay, but just for basic Preschool Promise knowledge, know that this is the requirement and that you need a waiver if you're not providing this. And then there's going to be a link that you can check out if you're new and you haven't reviewed the grant manual. That's a really good starting place to kind of acquaint yourself with Preschool Promise. And then also know that right now, every program is following the emergency childcare guidance during the state of emergency. We got a few questions on licensing requirements. So, if your program is owned and operated by a school district, do you still need to be licensed? And the answer is no. School districts are exempt from licensing. You can absolutely use licensing rules as guidance, and you do need to follow that emergency childcare guidance. Every childcare program operating right now must follow those guidelines. But as far as licensing with the Office of Childcare, no. A program that is owned and operated by a school district is going to be exempt from that requirement. A few different questions about the Ready School Safe Learners document. So we've already covered you must follow emergency childcare guidance, ECC, but you may choose to align with Ready School Safe Learners. So some programs, you know, under the state of emergency, childcare was allowed to continue operating, but you may have decided that under Ready School Safe Learners, your school that you were operating in wasn't eligible for in-person learning. And so you were going to align with that and offer a distance learning model. And that's okay. You would just submit a waiver and we would approve a different service delivery. And then, of course, since so many of us are operating a little differently right now, we've had several questions about what that means for documenting your hours on the monthly report and documenting attendance for home-based learning. So with attendance, our grant manual says that a program implementing a home-based model needs to develop their own process on how to track and report attendance for when children are served remotely. And we've had a few great ideas from providers on this. So those have included family phone calls, virtual check-ins, doing virtual meeting attendance, or having families complete participation logs. Any of those will work for our purposes as long as you have your internal process for counting a child as participating for any particular program day. And then when you go to report that via the monthly report, you would document that the same way. You would document a child as present the same way you would if they were in the classroom. So if a child participated 3 out of your 4 days, you would document that via the report. So for hours, you know, this has been a little confusing for folks. The 900-hour requirement is for in-person instruction. So if you didn't offer any in-person instruction, when you get to the monthly report and it says how many hours of service delivery did you offer, you would write down 0. We still value what you're doing, but as far as the data that we need to be collecting, we're not collecting data on hours that you were delivering food boxes or learning kits to families. We appreciate it, but it's not data that we're asking you to report on at this time. And make sure that you have a waiver for hours too. So if you got a waiver for doing a hybrid model or a home-based learning model, you'll need to follow up with an additional waiver for offering fewer hours than the 900-hour requirement. So if you weren't aware of that, make sure you take care of it now. And I see a few folks in our waiting room, so I'm just going to let them in really quick. Okay. And then reports. So speaking of monthly reports, a few of you asked what all of the different required reports were for Preschool Promise. So far those are the budget, which was due 60 days after your grant execution, the grantee profile part 1 and part 2, which were both due on November 16th last year, quarterly expenditure reports due on December 15th, February 15th, May 15th, and July 31st. And then your monthly reports are always going to be due 15 days after the end of the month. So February's report will be due March 15th and so on. We also want you to anticipate an end of year report. We have not sent that out yet, but we know there's going to be some additional data that we're likely going to want to collect as we approach the end of this year. A few of you have asked about reopening. As COVID numbers start going down, I'm knocking on wood right now, but you're considering going back to in-person learning, and we support you in changing your service delivery model. What you would want to do is notify us by email at psp@state.or.us. What we'll do is send you your grantee profile and ask you to update it so that we have a current documentation of what you're offering. And then we'd ask you to notify your local early learning hub so that when they are recruiting families for you, they are recruiting accurately. And then we will, of course, ask you to use that emergency childcare guidance. And I'm going to hand it off to Dana to cover teacher requirements.
So thank you, Angela. So another question that we've been receiving a lot is teacher qualifications. So what are the qualifications for a lead teacher. You know, in Preschool Promise, we aspire all of our lead teachers to go ahead and have a bachelor's degree. However, we know that in this, you know, industry and just early care and education, we do have some barriers for many of those who are in those roles. So what we have with Preschool Promise is that there are 3 different pathways where a lead teacher can be a lead teacher in Preschool Promise. So the first one will be either having a CDA or be at a step A in the oral system. So that is one of the pathways. The second one will be an associate's degree with additional training or additional certification in early childhood education or a related field. And then the third one will be the bachelor's degree. So there are 3 different pathways to be a lead teacher in Preschool Promise. Now, one thing that has been going on, especially with this program year, is the pandemic. So we have a lot of grantees who are in their RFA had their lead teachers set up to have their CDA or step A, but they're still having some challenges. So due to the pandemic, we are offering a waiver, but we really need to know, like, what is that plan for that lead teacher to at least have the CDA or a step A in oral, and what are those supports? So for many of the grantees that have asked for that waiver, they're only needing like a couple months, either because the CDA was delayed because, you know, they're not able to do observations, or maybe trainings or classes were canceled. So just as you implement Preschool Promise, just remember, we aspire to have the bachelor's degree, but we also know that there's a lot of barriers for many individuals in early childhood. So then you have those 3 different paths. And then if with the 3 different paths, you're still finding some challenges because of that pandemic and everything, then you will go ahead and submit a waiver where we will need to go ahead and know, like, what is the plan and support for your staff to do that. So please refer to pages 21 to 23 of your grant manual for more information on this. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Already, so last week we went ahead and sent down and I think we send out in our Gov delivery an FAQ document. We're getting a lot of questions, like it's February, almost ending, and what is Preschool Promise going to look like next program year? And we know that many of you, you know, you have staff, you have children, you have families, you need to know what's going to go ahead and happen with your Preschool Promise grant. So please refer to that document. This presentation will be shared with you with the hyperlinks and everything, but what I'll do is just spend some time just covering some of those questions. And I'm sure that you're going to have some additional questions, and please go ahead and add those in the chat box. So what will Preschool Promise look like next program year, after this program year? So we're looking at 21-22. So our intention is to continue the current Preschool Promise service levels. The process on how grantees are going to continue their grant and what are the requirements for continuation, that's still in development. We hope to go ahead and release that by the end of next month. And also we'll need to go ahead and gather some data from you too, right? We need to also see, like, do you want to continue? Are you open for expansion? What does that look like? So do keep an eye on those emails, just because we are going to be engaging with you a little bit more to go ahead and also get your thoughts in this process. So our intention is maintain current service levels, and then there's also obviously our due diligence with our grants as far as the requirements and the different thresholds. So we look forward to connecting with you again towards the end of next month as we continue to work on this process. Okay. We'll go next. And then under enrollment and unspent funds, and definitely for Preschool Promise, we'd never expected that we will be doing an expansion on Preschool Promise in this condition. So under enrollment is something that is across all of our publicly funded programs, not just Preschool Promise. We have our OPK programs, Head Starts, Relief Nurseries, and so on. So for under enrollment due to COVID is not going to go ahead and impact your ability to participate as a grantee for next program year. that is a concerning question that has been coming up. It's like, is it going to impact me for next year? Are you going to reduce the amount of slots because I wasn't able to fill all of the awarded Preschool Promise slots? Know that that is not going to go ahead and affect your ability to do that. Also, unspent funds. We know that we started late. You may still have unspent funds that you're not going to be able to spend by the end of the program year. There's not going to be any type of penalties or anything for any type of unspent funds for next program year. Always note, you should not claim any more than you spend, right? So that is also just a cross-reference. It's like all the spending that you do should align to what's allowable and reasonable in your grant manual. So once again, there is no impact on next program year in regards to the amount of slots for under enrollment and other spend. Okay, next. Now, another question that we've received is like, can I carry over some of those funds? If I'm not able to go ahead and spend the funds, can I use them past June 30th? The answer is no. All services, any kind of training, everything needs to occur in this program year. So there is no carryover for any Preschool Promise funds past June 30th, because then the thought is that we will have a new grant cycle, which will be starting on July 1st. So just definitely, you know, another question that has come up is like, well, what about if there's a conference that I can attend in August? Can I use the funds for that? And our guidance across all publicly funded programs is that all services, including training, professional development, and technical assistance, must be rendered on or before June 30th. So just, you know, as you're working with your different fiscal department, just go ahead and keep that in mind. And like I said, the reason why is because we will be starting a brand new grant cycle on July 1st. Okay, so next slide. And then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Antonio. This is his first Preschool Promise state meeting. So he's gonna go ahead and do this slide for us. I'm gonna turn it over to Antonio. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dana. So budget changes. Can we reallocate funds unless specifically dedicated to a purpose defined by defining your grant agreement? Funds may be reallocated or purposed to meet other program needs. So those needs must be reflected in your modified service plan. Can we repurpose the funds for facilities upgrades? It depends on the nature of the upgrades. Example, those that keep property in an efficient operating condition, help meet licensing regulations or other health and safety guidelines, replacements of component parts of building structures you are using for your facility to provide services under the grant agreement. So remember that $5,000 rule.
All right, so when we're talking about the reporting, I refer you all back to slide number 12 of the presentation this evening to remind you of the due dates for each of the corresponding reports. That's either your monthly reports or your quarterly reports. And the words on here, really the important part to understand is if you are late or delinquent or technically out of compliance on having any one of said reports submitted, the division won't be able to proceed in approving your EGMS claims until those reports are submitted. We try to be super helpful and super understanding, especially when we're thinking of school districts and large entities, because we know that there are multiple players, if you will, that are participating in the support of Preschool Promise, whether that's your office staff, your financial department, or your education coordinators. And so on the next slide is an example of an email that you might receive if you have not submitted your reports in a timely manner. And in this email, as you can see, it's basically going to say, hey, we recently received a claim with an EGMS. Unfortunately, it's been rejected because we have not received your, whether it's your Q1 report or your December report or your January report, whatever the report that we're missing. And we, again, I include a link to the report and actually telling you which report that we're missing. And as soon as you're able to submit that report, then you're able to, again, as it says in there, please resubmit your claim within eGums, and then we can get that processed and approved, and those dollars out the door to your school district or entity.
And just going back a little bit on the reports, I mean, we definitely do need your collaboration with the reports. You know, as you can imagine, we need to go ahead and submit a lot of data. How many children are we being served? Where are the expenditures? How are things really going with Preschool Promise across the state? You will go ahead and get the email from Anthony, and at the same time, you can always go ahead and send us an email to our PSP email if you're just not sure, especially with entities like yourself. We know that you have different people and you may not be aware that maybe someone may have missed the report. So you are always welcome to go ahead and send us an email. We can send you a report on what is it that you're missing too, if you're not sure. Go ahead, Angela.
So I think, believe it or not, we went through that pretty quickly. And I know our friend Meredith has been collecting a few questions for us. And maybe Meredith, can you share a few, and we'll see what we already can answer. And if there's things that we need to take back to our team, we will, and we'll try to get back to you quickly.
Absolutely. We got a couple of questions that have been answered already in terms of how do I get an invite to join the SharePoint site? How do I get names onto the Gov delivery? So I'm making sure that I get that every time. What if I have additional budget questions? And any of those types of questions can go right to our email, our PSP email, psp@state.or.us. I think that's it. There we go. So yeah, so if you have any additions you'd like to the Gov deliveries or the SharePoint or just other questions, that is the email that you want to use. So that one we can check off. And here's a question, good question. It says much of our PSP space is within a school district building, but operated by a Head Start program. We are required to be licensed, correct? Somebody want to take that?
I can take that. This is Dana. Yeah, the license requirement is going to be dependent up to you. What is your, what the type of provider you are. So if you are a center base that is in a school district, you will be required to be licensed. It's only if your entity is a school district or a non-exempt that you're not required to be licensed.
Yeah, we have a few different programs that partner with school districts, and that's a little bit different. So if you're partnering with school district and using their space, but you're not owned and operated by the school district, you're still going to be required to be licensed. But if you're owned and operated, then you're going to be exempt.
Great. We had a couple of questions about clarifying the required hours for Preschool Promise. And the first one around that is different types of programs define direct service hours differently. Can you please explain for Preschool Promise exactly what types of hours count to our 900 hours?
Thank you. I can go ahead and tackle that one. I'm sure there's others that can go ahead and add. We consider direct hours is those hours in the classroom for children. So any kind of hours in direct services, conferences will be included in there, but it's really any in-person services for the children.
Great, thank you. So connected to that, people had questions if they filled out the monthly program report incorrectly around the understanding of those hours, how would they go ahead and resubmit a correction to their monthly reports?
We would ask that you please send an email to the Preschool Promise, that PSP email address, stating the name of your organization and that you want to do an update, and we can essentially send what you submitted back to you for editing purposes.
And that's with any of your reports. So if you submitted a report and something happened, please do go ahead and just email us, and that way you don't have to do your expenditure report all over again. We can go ahead and send you an update request.
Also along those lines, a question is, where do we submit a waiver for hours? And I wonder if we could put that link up here in the chat box to get to the template for the waiver for number of hours.
And I just put in I answered that in the chat box, the waiver request, the waiver request can be accessed on the reporting tab of the SharePoint site. So if you do have access to the SharePoint site, please access it there. Let's get 2 birds with 1 stone. If you don't have access to the SharePoint site, let's get an email on that, and we can then make sure that you have access to the most current updated form.
And I'm going to chime in really quick just to remind people that we have 2 separate waivers. So we have a waiver specific for service delivery if you're offering a hybrid model or a home-based learning model, and then we have a waiver that kind of covers everything, any other preschool promise requirement. So two separate waivers, 2 separate links. Make sure you're using the right one.
So while we're on the subject of hours, I see a clarification in here. Does virtual instruction work for hours? Go ahead, Dana, you want to clarify that one?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. Does virtual instruction work for hours?
If you are, no. So if you, for example, if you receive a waiver for a comprehensive home-based model, you are given the waiver to go ahead and do that type of instruction. So you will automatically not be able to fulfill the 900 hours. So you'll need to do a waiver for the hours. And just a point of clarification, I need to retract something. I said that conference time counts towards the amount of hours. That doesn't count. It's only the in-person instruction for the children is what will be counted on that 900 hours.
We're getting a few more questions in on this topic, so I think maybe we'll just restate it and then I'll go ahead and put it in the chat box so people have it. So in terms of counting towards the 900 hours that we asked you to report on, those are only in-person instruction hours. If you are not doing in person, you do need a waiver for that type of service provision. And we have the waiver link up here. I believe Anthony put it in the chat box. If you're doing virtual services, comprehensive distance learning, etc., you do still need to have documentation about who you're serving and what type of service you're providing. There was a slide on that before, and it's really important work that you're doing. We're just not asking for it on our monthly report. So it's something that you need to keep as backup documentation for yourself so that you have that backup documentation around your expenditures if needed, or around what type of service you're providing. But again, we're only asking you to report in those monthly reports on your actual in-person service hours. If you have a waiver, for your type of service that you're doing, you would need to hear back from us that it's approved. If for some reason you sent in a waiver and you haven't heard of an approval yet, go ahead and email us at our PSP mailbox, because that is something that needs an approval. And folks are asking, what if I switch from distance learning to hybrid, or I'm going from on-site to hybrid? Any changes in your service model, you'd want to email us and let us know, and do a waiver for it, just so we can keep track of what your service model is. Anybody want to add anything on that?
No, I think, you know what, well, I can go ahead and ask something. I think it's going back. We're seeing a lot of people going to that, to in-person. So definitely we still want to know that, because otherwise you're going to go ahead and be in our system as being a grantee that's offering comprehensive home base. So at any time, if it changes, please do let us know. And then we will just go ahead and, that way we can go ahead and notate that on the waiver, but then also we need to go ahead and send you your grantee profile so you can get that updated. And also don't forget to go ahead and notify your local early learning hub, so as they're helping you recruit for children, they know what is it they're recruiting for.
Great. Okay, how about, somebody had a question. If the CDA is equal to step 7 in ORO, why does the manual require a CDA or a step 8 in ORO for teacher requirements? And I can take that if no one else would like to?
Go ahead, Meredith.
Okay, so just to clarify, I think this is what the question is asking. A CDA, which is a Child Development Associate certificate, is equal to a step 7, but it has some other requirements around it that it meets the preschool promise pathway. And then when you have a step 8, it doesn't mean that you have your CDA certificate. So they're kind of different ways of meeting the same thing. You can either have a step 8 on its own, or you can have the CDA, which is equivalent to the step 7. So I hope that answered it. If not, the person who asked can go ahead and ask another way in the chat box. One of the questions we got was, do we have a system in place to notify providers about which report we've received, or should folks reach out to Preschool Promise to check?
Yeah, so one thing that's going to start happening like next week, because we know that life gets busy, is that you will be contacted by Antonio. If there's any kind of reports or anything, you'll receive reminders. We try to go ahead and do that through our Outlook. That the email is going to come from our PSP email. So you're either going to hear from Antonio or just a regular or anybody else here. But I will say, as you can imagine, with a capacity of 188 grantees, if you are just not sure, just go ahead and send us an email and we can go ahead and send you a summary as well. Yeah.
I'll do a really quick expand if that's okay, which is just one of Smartsheet's functions that's pretty great is at the bottom, you can send me a copy of my responses. And I know you have multiple people sometimes working on the same things, but if you can, it will send you a confirmation, but you can also have it send you back a copy of your responses. So if there are multiple people that are working on it and somebody might need to know what you submitted previously, that's a way to get that information and store it.
We also had a question just clarifying whether current Preschool Promise providers get automatic enrollment for next year.
So I can mute there. So great question. Like I said, our intent is to go ahead and continue current service levels. However, internally, we're working on the process of what that continuation looks like and what are the different things that we're going to be looking into. So still in the works. So we look forward to sharing that with you next month. And so yeah, so just go ahead and stay updated. Go ahead and keep an eye on your emails and any invitations from us.
And if I can jump in really quickly, I saw some in the chat when I checked in really quick that somebody asked if you'll get a copy of the slides, and yes, you will. There's a few, the report slide doesn't have links to the reports, and I want to make sure they're added, but it will be sent out to everyone here. And then we're also recording just as a reminder. So if you have somebody on your team that you think would really benefit from listening in, that recording will be sent out as well.
We're getting a couple of questions, folks, about the SharePoint site and maybe some tabs that aren't working or things that are getting error messages. Now I'm seeing some head nodding as well. If folks are able to capture a screenshot of what you're seeing and email it to the PSP mailbox, we'll get our tech person, Ben, right on that. Thank you for that feedback. We were not aware. So send us a screenshot if you can, and we will look into that.
Yeah, it's good to know that it's more that I've heard one person emailing me about some technical issues, and it's good to hear that, well, it's not good to hear, but I'm glad that we can kind of get a better picture, because I've been trying to check in with our IT folks and see if that's a widespread issue or just a few individuals. So screen grab is a great idea.
Great. We're getting a couple of questions about summer school, and some of these might be better addressed individually to PSP, but I wonder if Dana or others could give us just an overview, whether we have thoughts about how to continue the Preschool Promise programming for the summer, for programs that are year-round. Let's see, is there any talk of any special money to provide summer school? We love special money. Yeah, any thoughts on summertime programming?
I can go ahead and add, and if Anthony wants to add also from like the grant agreement for Preschool Promise, program year ends on June 30th. So we cannot go beyond that for our funds and our programming. So our hope is that obviously we can, the new year, the new program year will go ahead and start on July 1st. And then it all depends like when you will start like your next program year. But for our cycle, as far as like grant and as far as programming, ours goes from July 1st to June 30th. And that's when services end, and then you start a new program year. Anthony, is there something you want to add to that from the grant side of stuff?
I think that I mean that's the main core element of it. Also making sure that you're understanding that you're following the requirements of, you know, it's a minimum 900 hours, right? You can do more than 900 hours, right? You have the minimum 4 days a week. You get the hours per day, and you really take a solid look at your community, right? And what does the community need and your families need? But those are the pieces there. Again, that's one question that we've been asked in the past is, can I do more than 900 hours? And the answer is absolutely. Though just be mindful, there is no additional dollars that come out with that, right? So if you're doing 900 hours of programming, or you're doing 1,300 hours of programming, you're still getting the same grant award per child. So, and again, I use 1,300 as an example because we do have a handful of providers that do up to 1,300. They do more than the 900. So again, those are the minimum requirements.
Another question that has come up in relation to that is like, well, but what about summer school? Like, can they still be Preschool Promise, or can I use other funding? And absolutely, you can go ahead and use like different kinds of funding. Like if you are doing just a separate program, it's just with our Preschool Promise grant, it ends on June 30th, or reporting is only until June 30th. So it's like, we're really looking at that program year from July 1st to the end of June 30th, and then it starts all over again. Now, then the question comes, okay, well, what about for the following program year? When can I start my program? And that is, you know, we look forward to go ahead and give you more information, but it's also like, when does the eligibility start, right? And so when our children are deemed eligible. So we're hoping, you know, that we can go ahead and start on time for next program year. Everything starts on July 1st, and then you as a grantee decide when does your program for Preschool Promise start. But as far as like right now, our Preschool Promise grant is until the end of June. And then, like I said, our goal is to go ahead and maintain current service levels. Thank you.
We're getting some specific questions, and I'm getting some private chats around things around Spark and curriculum. And so I would encourage those specific questions. Go ahead and email us at PSP, and we can look at your specific situation around Spark. Some more questions about enrollment and things for how things will be handled for next program year. Again, that information will be forthcoming within the next month or so. Asking if registration will be continued to be done by the hub and how it will work. And again, we'll have that kind of information within a month or so. There was a question about paying teachers over the 12-month period, even if they aren't teaching in the summer. Can anyone speak to the to that question?
Anthony, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. So ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's really kind of an accounting or a business decision by your organization, whether you're paying your teachers on a 9-month or a 10-month, or you're amortizing over a 12. So that's not something that we are going to hold you to or dictate how you do that. It's really going to be your accounting practices or your business practices there. When it comes to salary or pay or those lines, really that our focus would be, are you meeting the guidelines in the salary requirements for your lead teachers and your teachers assistants that are listed in the grant manual?
Great. We're sort of coming to the end of the questions. So did we have a few wrap-up slides? And I can also just continue to watch the chat box as we finish up. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I think that's great. We'll give you back a few minutes of your time. Thank you so much for joining. Your work is absolutely invaluable to Oregon children and families, and we're so grateful for your partnership. If we didn't cover something today that you really hoped that we would cover, we still are happy to take questions. We hope to plan another meeting very soon, and look forward to getting your feedback on this meeting and also all areas of Preschool Promise as we move into this next phase 21, 22. So thanks again so much, and we appreciate your time. Anything else, Dana, Anthony, anybody else on the team want to say something before we head out?
Really, this is Dana. Really, just a warm thank you to all of you, and we do look forward to engaging with you in different areas. We know that we need to go ahead and do some updating on the grant manual, so we will be seeking stakeholder engagement on that. Also seeking your input on like enrollment and just really programming. So stay tuned for more. Like our goal is to go ahead and have more meetings with you during this program year, but definitely use the SharePoint site, use the email. And we know that each program is very specific with very individual situations. So please do take advantage of those consultations that you can go ahead and schedule with either your grant manager or with myself or Angela to really just help you. Our goal is for you to be super successful. So thank you.
And Dana, can you just remind everybody where the slides and the recording will be found, or Angela?
Yeah, my plan is to add the link to the recording and the slides in this week's communication. And if my only hesitation there is that we try to provide all of our information bilingually, and this obviously has been in English only. So I'm going to check on that with Dana if we don't send it through our PSP bulletin, but we'll get the email list through your registration to this meeting, and we'll send it out that way.
Well, thank you all. You guys all have a great evening.